we are following several events that are taking place. Let's now take you to the ANC in KZN. Secretary General Fikile Mbalula is currently addressing the media on various matters. Let's listen in.
Thank you very much, Comrade SG. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the Chair of the Province, the Provincial Secretary, and our National Spokesperson. We are here at Moses Mabhida to launch our elections manifesto, which also coincides with the phase that we call the Maihlome phase of our elections campaign. We have been doing a lot of build-up activities, various programs, going to different sections of KwaZulu-Natal, engaging with different sectors, and most importantly, working together with the volunteers of the African National Congress. We will today later be having a Numanyano of the ANC Women's League, which will be taking place here in eThekwini. We're dedicating this to a prayer, an interfaith prayer hosted by the ANC Women's League. Our own Secretary General will also be in attendance, accompanied also by leaders of the province and members of the National Executive Committee. There's also a major program led by Sanko today in the township of Umlazi, where they would also be mobilizing and pushing for the attendance here at the stadium. Moses Mabhida takes 75,000 people when we talk about its capacity, with 65,000 seated and 10,000 on the pitch. We've also planned for disaster management because of the mood and the interest of many South Africans wanting to come and be part of this very memorable day. Starting with our members, our volunteers and supporters of the ANC. We've planned for any disaster in terms of overflow. The beach itself will be a site that is yellow with the ANC colors, the face of the president and leaders of the movement. The second area will be an overflow that has also been designated. The first area to fill will be Moses Mabhida, the stadium itself. Secondly, we plan to have the president speaking on time because of the weather conditions. We want the president to speak not later than 11 o'clock. There will be various programs that will take place here in a form of a celebratory but also a demonstration of ready to go to battle. That is going to be shown through various cultural activities and various events that will be happening here, but the primary event is the launch of the ANC's elections manifesto. That is going to be preceded by a program tomorrow at the ICC in the afternoon, where we have what we have dubbed the night with the president. The night with the president would be attended by those Tintswalos, young and old, not only those who are 30 years, but those who have been touched and blessed by this democracy as led and championed by the African National Congress government. Secondly, there will be those who are coming out to make pronouncements that they support the African National Congress. And then Comrade President will then present a preview of the manifesto. It's going to be something that is also jovial, but re-energizing and showing that we are ready to go to battle. We have 1,000 people that will be in attendance. The process have actually started already. And lastly, on Monday, the ANC will be having a cleaning campaign in and around Moses Mabhida, because we want to leave it as it is, as we found it, and we will, as leaders of the ANC, be involved in it. So we're looking forward to a very, very memorable day here. And we also are aware that there are provinces that have indicated their interest to come. Our provincial secretary will be communicating with them and will be updated as to which provinces are going to be in attendance. All of us, we're looking forward to the statement that would have also been reflected upon by the National Executive Committee later today. Thank you very much, Comrade SG.
Thank you very much, Comrade DSG. And the DSG forgot to tell you that tomorrow is not a tie session, black tie or anything of that sort. It's ANC regalia, and it's not a 3-meal course. We are not selling tables. We are launching the manifesto. And the president will be the main person tomorrow. So you must be there on time, otherwise you'll find us to have started tomorrow night. That is the beginning. There are many important events that took place this week. It is the budget. We'll reflect on that. It is the cadre policy matters that we have been dealing with, and the announcement of the date of the election, which we welcome as the African National Congress, that we all know now as South Africans that on the 29th of May this year, on a Wednesday, we have an appointment for the elections of South Africa as declared by the president. On the deployment policy and the gaslighting of cadre policy, which we believe is a gaslighting of cadre policy, a smokescreen. The DA's real plan is to declare the transformation unlawful and unconstitutional. The ANC prides itself as an organization that discusses all its policies openly and embarks on robust public engagements before it adopts any policy. This tradition was developed and perfected over almost a century, from its first constitution adopted in 1919 to the Bill of Rights in 1923, the African Claims in 1943, the Freedom Charter in 1955, the Strategy and Tactics Documents 1969 to date, the Harare Declaration in 1989, Constitutional Guidelines for a Democratic South Africa 1991, Ready to Govern 1992, and to the Reconstruction and Development Program 1994. The adoption of ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy in 1998 followed a similar process, and it was based on the resolutions of 1985 Kabwe Consultative Conference and the 1997 National Conference of the African National Congress. The key elements of the ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy are summarized in the 1997 policy document as follows, and you can Google it. Recruitment, which emphasis placed on recruiting from the motive forces who stand to gain from change and will therefore begin to advance transformation policies. Steps must be taken to ensure they understand and internalize ANC policies. Education and training, political education, academic training, and specialized skills constitute the defining feature of a cadre. Other attributes include patriotism, revolutionary morality, humility, hard work, discipline, loyal and selfless service, dedication and keen interest in learning and self-improvement. Deployment and redeployment. Deployment must be according to speciality, aptitude, qualification, experience, and capability. Cadres should be correctly placed and promoted at the right time so that they may fully apply their talents and creativity cadres must also be redeployed to new areas of work so that they develop all-round skills to lead the process of national democratic transformation, promotion and accountability. The political performance of cadres through the knowledge of everyone's work, ability and personal life should guide placement and promotions, guard against favoritism, opportunism, regionalism, ethnical, tribal or gender discrimination. Preservation of cadres. Preservation should include consideration around working conditions, preservation of skills, health and security. These key elements of our cadre policy and deployment have guided the implementation of our National Democratic Transformation Agenda, also referred to as the National Democratic Revolution. The total transformation of our country into a non-racial, non-sexist, united, democratic and prosperous society. The ANC has not made it secret that its primary mission is to eradicate all forms of colonialism, patriarchy and apartheid, and empower those who were excluded and exploited. The transformative constitution of our country makes it mandatory, I quote, heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice and fundamental human rights, close quote. Transformation is therefore a constitutional imperative. The DA-led right-wing forces opposed to transformation have launched ideological offensive that has deliberately and systematically sought to fundamentally distort and crudely caricature ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy. For quite some time, a false narrative has been pushed vigorously in the media about the exact nature, purpose, and actual practices pertaining to the deployment of cadres. There has also been a concerted effort by the anti-transformation forces to use the courts in their fight to slow down, stop or reverse the transformation agenda by trying to impose a conservative interpretation of the Constitution and law of the Republic. Would like to deal with 5 core elements of the right-wing ideological offensive, gaslighting and narrative warfare against cadre policy and deployment strategy. The primary objective of this narrative is to discredit and defeat the National Democratic Revolution and the National Democratic Transformation Agenda led by the ANC Alliance, constituted together with the SACP, COSATU and SANCO, as well as the entire progressive forces spectrum in our country. Firstly, the Democratic Alliance spin doctors and ideologues have invested heavily in churning out the false narrative that the policy and practice of cadre policy and deployment is an aberration in a democracy and is therefore unlawful and unconstitutional. Nothing could be further from the truth. In many democracies, it is common practice that a party that has won elections seeks to ensure that the people who are appointed to senior positions in the administration understand and support the policy agenda of the democratically elected governing party. So long as such people are appointed in accordance with the legal procedures and they meet the competency requirements for such positions. After all, parties are elected to lead government on the basis of their policies and performance. And deployed cadres in this regard become the stewards to steer the policy paradigm as entailed in the elections manifesto of the party that won the elections. We are not implementing the manifesto of the DA. the manifesto of any other opposition party. We are implementing the manifesto of the African National Congress that the people in 2019, on the 5th of May, voted the ANC overwhelmingly into power. 5th of May and before that. And that is what we've been doing. You judge us on the basis of that manifesto and what we have committed ourselves and promised we will do for the people of South Africa. A study of several countries carried out by the OECD in 2007 found that political involvement in public administration is essential for the proper functioning of democracy. The study argued without it, an incoming political administration will find itself unable to change policy direction, as long as there are safeguards to protect the public service from being misused for partisan purposes instead of national interest. Importantly, the study found that more political influence in staff matters may work well if there are checks and balances. Essentially, political parties ensure that for their policy agenda to be carried out systematically, they must develop their own members so that they have shared vision and values and encourage them to acquire the requisite skills. In many democracies, party schools or training institutes are even funded through the public purse. Some parties rely heavily on recruiting people who share their vision and values. Recruiting from universities and think tanks. This practice is very prevalent in the United States of America, where every incumbent that wins election replaces the entire top echelons of the administration. Of course, there are other democracies where the practice is different. The DA is profoundly dishonest and misleading the public in presenting itself as a party that does not deploy its members into the public service to pursue its policy agenda. In this regard, the DA pretends that all its employees are merely recruited by the chance of merit and not a deliberate effort to advance the DA's agenda. There is evidence in the city of Tshwane and the Western Cape that the DA itself has been practicing its own version of deployment of its leaders and members into positions of administration where the party governs. This includes a parallel process of the DA federal executive candidates for employment in DA-led municipalities, as described by Alan Winde in a submission to the Public Protector in 2021, in which he correctly argued that such internal rules and policies are widespread, quote unquote, widespread and common. The narrative that the deployment of cadres is unconstitutional and unlawful has no basis in law. As the High Court correctly found out that the DA failed to point out to any text, neither in the Constitution nor any statute that supports their claims. It is an ideological and philosophical preoccupation of liberal extremists and neo-conservatives who want to declare as unlawful and unconstitutional any policy that seeks to dismantle and transform the apartheid, colonial and patriarchal social and economic realities. Their case was a failed anti-transformation intervention through the courts. The courts have been some of the terrains which some of these political battles are fought as substitutes for electoral victory, and the idea being to plant negative narratives about the legitimacy of the ANC national transformation agenda. In many cases, the courts have given a transformative interpretation of our law as mandated by the Constitution. We do not believe that the right wing will succeed in trying to use the courts to subvert transformation. There are many judgments that have upheld the transformative impulses and imperatives of our country's constitution. We are a democratic constitutional state, and the starting point win the elections. Recently, the DA approached the courts to declare cadre policy unconstitutional and unlawful, and they could not convince the Gauteng High Court on their ideological and philosophical spin. The High Court verdict was straightforward, I quote, "There is nothing unconstitutional about a political party influencing the policy direction of government, including the appointment of senior personnel to public service, so long as the public service is protected against being misused for partisan purposes." Close quote. There is indeed no law preventing a private body, such as a political party, from discussing potential candidates for any position. What is wrong is where the prescribed legal processes are not followed in the appointment of individuals, whether it be to the public service, the judiciary, or state-owned enterprises. If the due legal process is flouted, then those doing the flouting should be held to account. Many nominations to positions in public entities are made by Parliament or through specialized bodies like the Judicial Service Commission. Political parties actively participate in the parliamentary processes that select and make final recommendations or decisions on suitable candidates. In this regard, we draw your attention to the distortion of the letter of Jesse Duarte to Lamola, which the DA have perpetuated helplessly and falsely and misinterpreted it to the latter as meaning something else, that the ANC interferes in this particular regard. This is done precisely because Parliament must likewise satisfy itself that those being appointed into this crucial arm of the state are fit for purpose, same as the executive does within its purview of administrative governance. It should be expected that parties will have internal discussions about which candidates to support for these positions in public entities, and they even vote for such candidates. In other instances, members of Parliament also decide on whether to remove people from specific public entities in line with the Constitution. It is no accident that votes for candidates to such positions are almost always along party lines. Indeed, political parties should be encouraged to have such discussions because that is likely to produce a more considered outcome than simply relying on the whims of individual MPs. This is a political involvement, and consequently, it results in deployment of specific candidates. To argue that such any criticism of any candidate undermines the independence of the judiciary or any other public institution like the SABC or JSE or PSC is breathtakingly dishonest for a party that has often criticized individual candidates, often black, in Parliament interviews. So the question whether any party in its own internal processes discussed the names of particular candidates is not material if the final decision is in accordance with what the constitutional or legislative prescripts demands. This is what the court has actually said yesterday. So the DA has no case on this matter, as the court has ruled. Secondly, another ideological and philosophical incomprehensions being churned out by the DA propaganda machine is that the ANC cadre policy and deployment strategy is responsible for state capture and corruption. There is no truth to this false narrative. Those of us who live in South Africa know fully well how state capture was carefully orchestrated and executed by the Gupta brothers and their network of enablers in government and big corporates. There is ample evidence from the Zondo Commission and several court cases. In its lapse of logic, informed by the attempt to woodwink voters, the DA has suddenly and opportunistically forgotten that state capture and corruption is not a party political agenda, but a result of calculated actions by networks of individuals who seek to weaken and destroy the capacity of state institutions so that they can loot large sums of public funds for their own selfish benefit. The DA wants to excuse the thieves and give them political cover that they were stealing for an ANC instead of ensuring that those responsible for state capture and corruption in our land must face the consequence of their selfish and greedy deeds. The ANC has tightened its internal processes to hold all its members involved in wrongdoing accountable and has further taken steps to give more teeth to anti-corruption agencies of the state. No member of the ANC can say they were given a mandate by the ANC to loot the public purse. It is not plausible, and there should be no excuse. Thirdly, the DA's gaslighting flies in the face of the very essence of multi-party democracy. Cadre recruitment and deployment are amongst the key functions of political parties, and political parties are critical to multi-party democracy. Political parties are key to our multi-party democracy, which we fought for, and is guaranteed in the Constitution. The government is therefore the expression of the people's choice, expressed through elections. It has been argued, I quote, that political parties are the key mechanisms that make the democratic chain of political delegation and accountability work, close quote. The literature on political parties across the world therefore converges on the following key tasks that political parties perform in democratic societies: soliciting and articulating public policy priorities, socializing and educating voters, balancing opposing demands and converting them into general policies, activating and mobilizing citizens, channeling public opinion, and lastly, recruiting and training candidates for public office. Most political parties campaign on policy platform, manifesto, which is what the ANC is going to do this weekend. And when they are elected to govern, seek to implement its political programs in government. This is an important part of legitimization of democracy and depends on, I quote, extent of which policies submitted for public approval before an election translate into material outcomes once a political party has won power. And that is why the DA is opposed to affirmative action, is calling for leaner public service. It's against our social security policies. They are against them. It's their policy. They are against affirmative action. What we have done in the past 30 years to affirm black people into critical position of state power and even to society in general, including women, blacks, and affirm them into positions. They are opposed to that. They say they will reverse that. They equate that to racism or whatever that they characterize to be. They believe that this society has normalized after 1994. We believe 1994 was a breakthrough that enabled us to accelerate transformation in our country. And that's what we stand for as the ANC. For any serious governing party to leave this program of policy to implementation to chance, as the DA well knows, is irresponsible. Fourthly, since the early days of our democracy, the DA has been pushing the narrative that cadre policy and deployment policy strategy is the cause of government failure, because this is ostensibly about destroying people who have no qualifications and competencies for the positions for which they are deployed. You can look at all the people who have deployed, who have given you what you have given to the DA. Go and check their qualifications. As cadres of the movement, check them. I challenge you. And come back to me and say, this one did not qualify, did not go to school. DA deploys standard 3s where they govern. They deploy bodybuilders where they govern. That is the strategy of Broederbond. We are not Broederbond. We are not Broederbond. They call us Broederbond. We are the party of transformation. That's what we are. We don't deploy bodybuilders. And that is why even in our municipalities, where there's been ineptitude in terms of the deployment of people, as the ANC, we have called a stop to that. We have called a stop to that. And then we have also looked at misdeployment, where you were supposed to have a doctor deployed to deploy a teacher. In the 30 years, we have changed that. But look at our deployment and our decisions and look at the minutes of that deployment. You will see that the people we deployed are qualified as the ANC. I won't mention them by names, even some of their people, because it has been redacted in terms of what we have given to them, because I don't want to be subjected to Popia tomorrow. And then people say that Mbalula broke the rule, and then that is it. I won't do that. Even those that you know, I won't mention them. In the key elements of cadre policy outlined earlier, there is clearly stated emphasis about the importance of skills, qualifications, and competence. And I've made a point out about that. There are also citizens who are not members of the ANC, who have been deployed by our movement to specific positions on account of their expertise and patriotic loyalty to our country, its constitution, and its transformation agenda. These include members and leaders of opposition parties. We have deployed, including people as consulate and everything, who are not members and who don't carry membership of the ANC, because it's a call of patriotism. And some of the loud mouths of the DA today were deployed and to senior positions out of the country by this government. In our government, despite our majority, we have even brought people in because we believe in this vision of a united South Africa. Unity of our people is sacrosanct. Unity in diversity is what we embrace. We are not a black African party, as much as that is defined in the content of our revolution, but we are a non-racial organization, and we have expressed that in terms of what we stand for. At the Zondo Commission, our President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, made the point clear that there is nothing wrong with the policy itself, but there are known weaknesses in its application in instances where merit is not observed. I quote, "It is the ANC's view that the practice of cadre deployment should not be inconsistent with the principles of fairness, transparency, and merit in the appointment of individuals in public entities. Cadre deployment cannot be faulted in principle. It is a common feature of democratic practice around the country. But we will concede that there are weaknesses in its practical implementation that make the case for greater clarity both within political parties and the state," close quote. The 54th National Conference of the ANC has called on the organization to ensure that no unsuitable individuals, I repeat, no unsuitable individuals are deployed in the name of cadre policy, and that more investment should be made in the development and encouragement of ANC members to undergo rigorous ideological, academic, technical, and ethical training as part of the renewal project. This will enable the ANC members to play a central role in improving service delivery and transforming our country to heal the divisions and injustices of our past and create a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights as mandated by the Constitution of our Republic. The ANC has also tightened its processes of selecting candidates for national and provincial legislatures in order to ensure that we attract individuals and identify people with the necessary expertise, skills, experience, including young people who are talented and committed to social justice and fundamental change. It is our firm view as the ANC that the proper and full implementation of cadre policy as defined in our documents will help speed up transformation and service delivery. Fourthly and lastly, the DA then concludes by putting forward the false narrative that all the social and economic problems of South Africa can be traced to ANC's cadre policy and deployment strategy. Deep structural inequalities, continuing racism, spatial and economic apartheid, and the fact that the face of unemployment, poverty, and inequality is black and female is apparently because of cadre policy, cadre deployment. This is not only ridiculous, but it is also incredible that the DA believes that South Africans are stupid or simply forgetful. An honest conversation among South Africans cannot be based on such a false starting and conclusion, described by the Gauteng High Court as quote-unquote speculation and conjecture. To tackle persistent disparities in our society, we need more fundamental transformation and genuine partnerships. To try and avoid an honest conversation by heaping all the blame on cadre policy is neither serious nor truthful nor helpful. The question arises is, why is the DA seizing on cadre policy and hoping that the courts and the electorate will buy into their plan to declare transformation unlawful, unconstitutional, and therefore illegitimate? Why does this party think that South Africans will not see through its profound, naked hypocrisy and its real intentions? Why does the right wing think that people will not see through their agenda of funding many small parties in order to fragment the forces that seek genuine transformation of our country through the unity of the motive forces for change that stands to benefit from such change? In delivering this year's January the 8th statement, the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, made reference to the fact that the DA-led transformation forces are converging, hoping to stop, derail, and reverse the transformation agenda. And in pursuit of these objectives, they have accordingly adopted many strategies and tactics. And some of them is the proliferation of political parties. The ideological offensive on cadre policy and its caricature and the distortion is aimed at mobilizing South Africans, including many black and women professionals who have been the beneficiaries of the transformation policies against the ANC. What the DA and other parties that practice deployment have failed to tell the people of South Africa is that they too practice deployment. The difference is that they deploy mainly white males as their fight-back strategy against national transformation in order to preserve the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. Unlike the DA, the ANC is open and transparent. Everything we seek to achieve and in whose interest are we pursuing is in our public documents and in the public domain. The National Democratic Revolution and the transformation agenda we are pursuing are no secrets. We have nothing to hide. Can the DA share with South Africans its minutes and records of deployment, decisions, whatever they call it, and explain what policies underpin such deployment? In other words, in pursuit of what kind of society and on whose behalf is the DA governing in the Western Cape and several municipalities? The ANC awaits the release of the DA records of deployment with bated breath. The African National Congress is pleased to support the budget presented by Minister of Finance, Comrade Enoch Godongwana, as a significant step towards protecting the achievements of the 30 years of democracy in South Africa and working towards a better life for all citizens. This budget effectively addresses the pressing needs of the nation, as outlined in our January 8 statement. These needs include rebuilding the economy to create more jobs and stimulate growth, enhancing basic services and infrastructure, tackling gender-based violence and promoting family values, resolving the energy crisis and ending load shedding, and intensifying efforts against crime and corruption. We are confident that this budget not only sets the stage for achieving these goals, but also ensures the stability of the country's public finances in the face of global uncertainty. Thanks to this budget, the ANC-led government has successfully stabilized the GDP, gross domestic product, to debt ratio. We are especially pleased with the significant funding allocated to education, healthcare, social protection, infrastructure, and human capital development. In terms of rebuilding our economy to generate more jobs and foster growth, this budget shows a strong dedication, with 61.4 billion earmarked for employment programs over the medium term and 7.4 billion allocated to the presidential employment initiatives. It is clear that job creation is a top priority. Efforts to address the inefficiencies in the logistics system by improving efficiency, encouraging competition, and enhancing technological capabilities are commendable. The conditional allocation of 47 billion rand to Transnet will greatly contribute to these enhancements. Additionally, the budget takes a firm stance against crime, corruption, and gender-based violence. The allocation of 756 billion to the peace and security cluster underscores the government's commitment to combating these issues. We also welcome the announcement. Thank you very much.
Very much, SG. With that, I am going to invite. I am going to invite members of the media, and I'm going to start on my left, as I always do. I have a hand up there. Is it MNG? Yes, I will start with yourself, Lizella. Yeah, start with you, and then I'll proceed to the next person next to you.
Good afternoon, yes, afternoon now. Good afternoon, SG Lizella Tandwa from the Maiden Guardian. SG, I was listening to you as we were driving here, and you did speak to the emails around the former SG, the former DSG, the late DSG, JC Duarte. But however, the emails also seem to signify that there's limited power in the Cadre Deployment Committee. Power to even call the president to account, power to even call ministers to account. Can you please speak to that? How much authority does this deployment committee wield in the ANC? And do they have those powers to actually call the president and his ministers to account? Because it seems that way from the emails. You speak of accountability, that the ANC has held its members who participated in state capture, and yet we still have 90 plus members who were meant to sit in front of the Integrity Committee, and as far as we know, those members are yet to sit with the Integrity Committee. They're yet to be held to the Disciplinary Committee. What does that say about the ANC's commitment to this renewal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I move on to you, my brother over there, and then it will be SABC.
Yes, my name is Clive Lowe. I'm from the Witness newspaper. My question is closely related to what Isaac was asking. The SG went on left to say that the cadre deployment policy and the committee is illegal. Those are legal entities, and the work which they do is not against the constitution of the country. But what I would want to find out is that in most cases you find that a person or a structure that has the power to appoint also has the power to dismiss. As we know, the South African legal infrastructure, the labor law and everything, once the committee has appointed a person, let's say to the position of CEO of an SOE, does it have the power to dismiss that person in the event of it becoming clear that they are underperforming or they are corrupt? Like as you said, that they participated, they assisted the Guptas to loot. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ndebo. I'm with the SABC. Firstly, my first question goes to the Deputy Secretary General. On the people who will be attending, you said around 75,000 people were expecting them at the stadium. 10,000 will be seated, 65,000 will be seated, 10,000 on the pitch. And there's going to be an overflow. But you said some people will be located at the beach, or the beach will be painted in yellow, something to that effect. I don't know whether, are you saying the people who will be here will be accommodated at the beach as opposed to a place where they will be able to listen to the president? And then maybe to the Secretary General. SG, you went to town about defending the cadre deployment. But do you accept that at some point the cadre deployment policy has got its own weaknesses? And I'm saying this against the backdrop of at some point that a cadre that was deployed, especially at SARS. I would mention SARS because for now SARS I think is one of the best performing institution where the ANC had deployed its own cadre in the form of case veterans. At some point we had Tom Moyane there. Are you saying those weaknesses, you can't concede that at some point cadre deployment had its own weaknesses, where you have people deployed in such positions and only to find that they're becoming shadow of their former self? And there are a number of institutions that where some people are deployed there, but some of them are not really performing well because of the weaknesses of the personnel that you've deployed there.
All right, I'm going to take one or two more questions in the interest of time, and I'm going to ask colleagues to keep it crisp and succinct. I'm going to move to the right. I've got my sister at the back there. Yes, please proceed in a pink jacket, blazer.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Atin Tohana from Russia Today. My question is very simple. You spoke about how you're waiting with bated breath for the records of the Democratic Alliance's records. Are you pursuing this in any form or shape? Thank you.
Thank you, Ati. Didn't spot you there. My apologies. Next to you, there is a colleague. A male colleague. Please go ahead.
Some myself from the SABC. Mr. Mbalula, you speak about how you as the ANC have pushed transformation, but did you not regress yesterday in Parliament when you decided to impeach a black judge with the very same people you are saying are regressive and want to push you back prior to 1994? Are you not regressing this? It's not double speak, are you not being hypocritical as an organization? Secondly, on the issues pertaining to cadre deployment, Can you take us through on how this cadre deployment committee actually works? Is it cast in stone on the person that you decide, or is it a recommendation to government on how or who should be employed or put in those boards of SOEs or CEO? Then lastly, on the issues pertaining to deploying some who belong to the DA, what is the thrust of doing that, particularly when you look at the shamble that you created as a governing party, when you employed someone who had no technical knowledge or technical skill as a group's chief executive officer of the power utility that is today crippling you, and you're on the verge of losing power because you're simply failing to resolve the energy crisis. Then lastly, you go to provinces, you go to banks like Itala Bank, where you've deployed people who have run it to the ground. Does that not speak of the deficiencies that you deploy people who may have the academic requisites and prescripts, but simply don't have the knowledge how to run those state-owned institutions? You can go to Denel, you can go to Prasa, you can go to Transnet, where you had a barrage of female executives leaving, whether Mantashe even likened it to someone running away from methane. Thank you.
Thank you, Samgelo, for those 4 questions. I move on to the next colleague. Or SG, shall I keep it at that and maybe we have a second?
No, let's close.
Okay, shall we close? All right, I will start with my sister over here.
Siamka Matapa, News 24. Yesterday, Sis Mahlengi, you were asked about the WhatsApp group. You said you don't know anything about it. You've since learned that it does indeed exist. Why did you say it doesn't exist? And also,
WhatsApp group of what?
In terms of cadre deployment committee.
No, complete your question. Let's maintain some decorum.
They were confused. So also with regards to the WhatsApp group, is it still there? Does it still function in the way that it did, as the documents show, haphazardly, very seeming unprofessional, or is the process taken more seriously now of deploying people into government? And also, the MK party is having its own manifesto thing this weekend. Does the SG have anything to say about that? And also, could you please take us through what you found in Russia, in your Russia trip? What was the outcome of that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then that was the last question. May we have some decorum, please? Is this a hand over there? Okay, Lunga. Yeah, proceed, go ahead.
All right, you've been watching the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula brief in the media.